Hello everyone, so in this video we are going to do a quick review of the basic concept of loops. So we're going to talk about what it is, and we're going to take a look at a simple while loop and how we can apply loops to solve some problems. So first, before we started talking about loops, we wrote MATLAB scripts that were ran linearly or that were executed line after line. So if we had commands line after line like display of 1 and this display of 2 and so on and so forth, we saw that these commands are run line after line, and we really don't have control of how many one-liners repeated or if they're run at all. So that's what chapter 6 is about, and today we're going to focus on how to repeat something without having to literally repeat the command multiple times like so. So the repetition, like the loop name suggests, is the basic purpose of a loop. And instead of having to write a same thing multiple times, we can use a loop to execute something multiple times without having to write it. So let's take a look at then example, just a silly example of how that might work. So like I wrote here earlier, let's say that we want to display number 1 because we like number 1 so much, very many times like so. So this is one way to do it definitely, but you can see how this can get tiring if you want to display 1 a million times because you like it way too much. So it achieves the purpose, but again, it's not the best solution. So what we're going to do here is write a while loop that will do the repetition for us. And the procedure of writing a loop, the while variant of it, goes something like this. So first, we have something called a loop variable. And this will be used in the condition of a while, and we will see that shortly. Often it's named I for index, because that's generally what the use is. And then we have the loop itself. So start with the keyword while, and then we give it some condition. And then two things we're going to do inside the loop is, one, we are going to do something we want to repeat, of course. And then increment the loop variable. Again, we'll see in a bit why that is necessary. And don't forget the end keyword at the end. Okay, so let's start with the condition here. And this while loop will execute, meaning whatever's inside of it will repeat as long as this condition is true. So we want to come up with something that will be true for a while and then become false at some point, and that some point should be when we want it to stop. So in order to make that happen, let's come up with the limit 10, and this is just going to be how many times the things are going to be repeated. So let's write the condition then using the relational operator. Say that I is less than equal to 10. Note that there's no semicolon at the end. And while this condition, I less than or equal to 10, is true, this inside of the loop, what we usually call a loop body, will execute. So something we wanted to repeat, like we shown here, was to just display number 1. And now what we need to do here is to increment the loop variable. But just to illustrate the point of why we need to have it, let's go ahead and save and run this program to see what might happen. Okay. So as you can see here, this program's still running, and if you think about it, you can realize that this program will never end. So I'm going to stop that right now. And the reason why this program ran forever is because this condition was always true. And we can see that because, okay, so I holds a value of 1 and limit holds value of 10. And, oops, I didn't even use limit here, but let's put that here now. And we can see that the value of I doesn't change, and the value of limit does not change. Therefore, this condition will always be true because 1 is always less than or equal to limit. So therefore, that is the reason why we have the loop variable to begin with to be able to alter this condition. And generally what we need to do is do something to this loop variable so that this condition will change after a certain time. So in our case, all we need to do is just increment it by 1, and that is just adding 1 to I and then reassigning it back to I. So I will go from 1, 2, 3 all the way to 10. And now if we run this, we see that 1 is only displayed 10 times, and that's what we wanted. So good. So that is the whole point of while loop. No matter how complex this body of the loop may get, all we want to do is repeat something how many ever times. So let's look at something that's a little more useful and do an example of doing a summation. So let's say we want to get a cumulative sum from 1 to 10. And before we start writing any code, this is recommended for any beginning programming students who are writing loops. Just do a few iterations yourself on paper or in the comment to understand what's going to happen. So in the mathematical term, right, so we have something like this going on. The sum from I equals 1 to n, right, in which case it's going to be 10. And we have I as a term. So, and if we expand this, right, so imagine that this is the summation notation that you are probably familiar with, or at least I hope. And we would get something like 1 plus 2 plus ... plus 9 plus 10, right? Okay. Now, if we were to do that by hand to get the cumulative sum, right, so get the first sum of the first term, and then the set 2 terms, 3 terms, all the way to 9 terms, and then 10 terms, it's going to look something like this. So we have I that's going from 1 to 10, and then we have the sum, right? So we are starting from I equals 1. So when we just add the first term, we get sum of 1. And the second term now is going to be 2. So if we add these two, we get, what do we get? 3. And next we get 3 as a term right here. And then the sum of the first 3 terms is going to be 6. Let's just do one more and find out that 4 results in sum of 10. So we can think of it as, okay, so this 10 was achieved by adding 1, 2, and 3, 4, or we can also think of it as equivalently that this 10, right, the sum of 4 terms was achieved by taking a new term and adding it to the existing or previous sum, right? So that's kind of important to note because we are trying to find something that repeats and write that into a loop. So let's move on and actually write the loop then. Again, start with the loop variable, and I'm going to use 1 again, I again, to hold a value of 1 to begin with. Let's get us some space. All right. And then we may need a few more variables, but we'll worry about that a little later. And let's go ahead and just sketch out the loop here. So without the comment, while some condition, so it looks like we are repeating something 10 times. Again, so it might make sense to set I is less than equal to the limit, and in this case, since we're using n, use n variable to hold the value 10. And okay, so what do we want to repeat? We don't know yet, so let's skip that. But at least so far as growing I goes, we know the I must go 1, 2, 3, 4, just like last time when we printed a bunch of or displayed a bunch of 1s here. We just increment I by 1. So we can do that by doing I equals I plus 1, just like last time. And then end keyword at the end. Okay, so now we need to figure out what exactly we want to repeat here. And like we were thinking just a moment ago, okay, so to get a sum at term I, we look at the previous sum or existing sum, and then we just add the current term I. So maybe that's something we will do, and you might have noticed that, okay, wait a minute, we don't have anything to keep track of this sum here. And since we given it the name sum, well, let's just use that. Realize that it starts from 0, right? So before we start doing anything, adding anything, or before the loop runs, the sum must start at 0, so that when we start adding something, we are taking the existing sum, which is 0, then the first term 1, to get the next sum at I1 to be 1. All right, so noticing that pattern, we can write something like this. Sum is going to be taking the existing sum and then adding the value of I to that, like this. So look at this for a second and make sure that you understand how this is working. I realize that this line might be a little confusing because wait a minute, we're saying that sum is equal to sum plus I. That's like never true. But remember that this is an assignment, right? So we are doing the right-hand side first, which adds the existing sum and a new term, right? So just like adding 3 and the new term 3 to get 6. So this will be 3 in our example of these lines here. This will be 3, the I will be 3, so this evaluates to 6, and then we are updating our new sum to be 6 right here. Okay, so that's just going to repeat until we reach the last term. And at the end, let's display the value of sum and see if what we did is correct. Okay, so we got the sum of 55, which was expected. So that is good. But maybe we want to look at how this came to be. And one easy way to do that is to just simply remove the semicolons temporarily and run the loop again to see what's changing how. Okay, so we started with sum equals 0. And when we entered the loop here for the first time, the sum was updated to be 1 because it added 0 and I to update sum to be 1. And then right after that, we incremented I, right? So, okay, it makes sense that we started with I equals 1 and then we added 1 to it. So now it's 2. And then it continues on just like we did by hand until, notice at the very end, that I turned 11. So now, when it looped back to the beginning of while condition here and checked if I was less than or equal to n, right here, right? So this would be right after the 10th iteration. This would have looked something like internally 11 less than or equal to 10. So this would evaluate to false. Therefore, this condition didn't satisfy and the loop was terminated, and the next line, which was display of the sum, was executed. That's why we got this right here. Okay, so this is a basic example of the while loop, and make sure you can do this yourself without looking at any notes to kind of figure things out and solve similar problems. Maybe another one you can think about is how do we get the summation of all the odd numbers so that we get 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, and then maybe go up to 11, right? So I think we did something like this in the quiz, but if you couldn't quite figure it out, so this is a basic structure of how to repeat things, right, and get a summation. So try that out yourself, and on the next video, we will take a look at how to do different kind of loop, which will be a for loop, and how we can use different applications of loops to solve more complex problems.